All right, April 16th meeting is now in session. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silence.
Take a moment to remember the 15 police officers and 7 firefighters that have passed since our last board meeting.
Thank you. Please be seated. Okay, well, welcome everyone. We have a full house today. We are in our budget workshop for the next 30 minutes or so. That'll be presented by our finance officer, Gabe Boldra. Chief, is there anything you'd like to open up with?
If I may, I'll let Gabe get started. I did have some questions from a board member that I think are appropriate to daylight and just kind of enlighten everybody on. But I'll see. I don't want to step on his toes, so I'll interview.
That'd hurt with that boot. So. Okay, Gabe, you've got it.
All right. Here. You enable screen sharing. You got it. So you're looking at maybe 2 weeks, maybe 2 weeks. I think there it is.
That'd be 5. Through the 15th.
Yeah, otherwise, I'm after the 20th. I'm good.
So it's loading. I have to connect to my phone.
20th
not
through what's the end of the month?
31.
31.
Yeah.
We go to airplane mode.
Yeah, I connect to my phone. Okay. All right, perfect. Well, good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Thank you. Apologize for coming in hot today. Kind of, Mr. Chair mentioned, and Chief, today's the day for kind of our first full look at the fiscal year 25 budget as part of the workshop. We did get out kind of the detailed budget out to you, at least to make sure you had it over the weekend, have some time to look. I'm sure you spent the entire weekend reading through line by line and are well versed on next year's budget. We're still working through some things. I want to let the board know that this is by no means where the final budget is coming in at. But before we get into a lot of it, I am happy to say we're still looking like we're going to be able to hold the tax rate flat this year and not do any increase in the actual underlying tax rate and still kind of achieve all of the goals that staff has set out for next year within the budget. So today, I'm going to kind of just update you on the process and the schedule. Go over the 2025 expenses, go over 2025 revenue. One of the big things I like to include is just where we're at from a fund balance perspective. And the reason being is that is our safety net. That is what ensures that we can meet our capital needs both now and into the future, as well as if we do have some unforeseen circumstance come upon us more from an economic standpoint, or, again, we see significant increases in costs, we've created a healthy fund balance, a healthy reserve that allows us to draw upon and not necessarily have to go to the taxpayer to cover all of whatever that may be. And then we'll end with just some discretion and direction from the board, if something you like, something you'd like to see differently, and we'll go from there. Okay? Any questions so far? Perfect. All right. So we got our squiggly yellow worm over there on the left. We're at the April 16th budget workshop with the fire board. Also tonight may dictate as well, if the board would like another workshop before the May 21st meeting, we can discuss that as well. Right now in the schedule, we have the May 26th meeting, and 21st meeting, I apologize. And at that meeting time would be, where we would ask for tentative adoption, so we can stay on schedule for a June 18th adoption. Understanding, again, things can always change within the budget between May and June. You just can't increase the budget without reposting. So we can reallocate funding within that top line number. We just can't increase it between May and June once you tentatively adopt. So, yes.
So the tentative is looking for approval or disapproval, whatever, formally looked at by the 21st of May for adoption for June 21st, for the June.
At the May board meeting,
Right.
the intent would be to tentatively approve.
Yeah, so May 21st would be tentative adoption. At that point, you are not adopting the budget, you're just approving it for posting. It triggers the 20-day minimum posting. The only caveat to that is statutorily, you can't adopt a higher budget than what we posted in May. You could always adopt a lower budget, but you can adopt a higher one without us reposting for another 20 days.
Gotcha.
By law, we have to adopt the budget by August 1st. So that still leaves us really a month cushion if, again, something goes haywire and we need more time. Okay. So starting off, personnel expenses. There's not a lot within the budget this year on personnel, other than mainly realignment of some positions and some people within the budget. And I think Chief alluded that might be some of the questions some of the board members have had. But we do have, essentially for wages, we've got a placeholder for a wage study, as well as ensuring that everyone that's eligible gets a step increase and at least a 3.2% COLA.
Yes, what does, could you describe the placeholder, more, please?
We've done a fairly accurate assessment of what we anticipate based on the preliminary numbers from the wage study. The final stamped completed wage study should be done by end of week, but based on the preliminary numbers we have, I would argue we're probably placeholding more than what will be required to meet the needs of the wage study. So that there's probably gonna be some room where the budget, there's a reduction, a bit of a reduction.
In addition, we actually had a relatively small increase in PSPRS this year, 0.22% increase in contribution rate. And then ASRS actually had a decrease, a 0.02% decrease. One of the biggest things we're seeing within this budget is we're shifting over from our current healthcare through Kairos going to the PFFA health insurance. It's actually a 14% savings overall in our healthcare costs. And our workers' comp rates actually decrease, which is netting, a 2.8% reduction in our workers' comp costs for next year. Moving into, and one thing, yes.
I noticed that we've dropped the EAP program entirely.
We shifted that. So what is formerly known as a employee assistance program, our mental health resources has always been kind of a canned add-on to healthcare insurance programs. And so the company that we've contracted with to provide mental health resources to Start Moving On Counseling is now restructuring as MHO, Mental Health Oversight. It encompasses EAP plus the ability to support our peer support team with a clinician and all the other benefits they have with it. So we're not getting rid of employee assistance, we enhanced it, and it moved.
So the dollars moved over to MA, the mental health.
And so one thing, I want to point out as well on personnel is, another thing that we realized over the last current fiscal year and what we're going to see in the next fiscal year is we had a lot of senior firefighters, senior staff leave through retirement, and we replaced them with obviously you know, some people promoted up, but we've replaced all those senior level with entry-level firefighters. And that's really generating kind of a nice move for us next year when we're talking about budget in totality. And we're actually going up only about $209,000 right now in our personnel budget overall. And so we're accomplishing a new wage scale, accomplishing ensure, you know, a decent COLA and a step increase. And we just lost the connection again. And doing that all with a very minimal actual increase overall in personnel. In fact, only about a 1.1% increase in personnel.
I know that you sort of jumped over revenue.
Oh, we'll get to there. Yeah.
All right.
I want to make sure you guys like the expenses before we talk about the revenue. So I was reconnecting here. Okay. There we go. Yep. Next, looking at buildings and land. As you can see, this is definitely one of the areas that we are increasing next year, looking at an increase of about $77,000. Station and janitorial supplies is making up one of the largest increases within that budget item. Some of that's due to inflation. Some of that's due to adding, you know, just more items within there amongst some of the budget requests. And then building repair and maintenance, again, is another item which is being increased a lot due to inflationary factors. But really, station and janitorial, we're seeing a large increase based on what we're actually spending today. And that's what's kind of driving a lot of that increase for next year on there. Vehicles and equipment, you know, up until this weekend, I felt a 10% increase in fuel for inflation was adequate. With the geopolitical climate right now, that may not be enough. And so as we refine the personnel side with getting the final wage scale, as we see how things continue to unfold, before we get to a final budget, we may bump that number up a little bit. Another big inflation impact that we're seeing is in tires. That request is increasing 36%, not because we're buying more tires or buying nicer tires, purely due to the cost of what it's costing us to maintain our current fleet with that. Fire equipment maintenance increasing 38%. And then one thing is, again, more of not a increase in cost, but more a shift in where we're funding it. We have two enterprise lease agreements. So we had one that we're originally funding through the operating, and one that we essentially said we had capital dollars to buy these trucks. We decided to do an enterprise lease because that was the only way we were able to get the vehicles there for a while due to supply chain issues. And so we were essentially using that funding out of our capital plan. But with where this budget's coming in, with our ability to kind of continue to fund everything without a tax rate increase, we're trying to roll that into the operating budget and free up that money within capital again with some of these larger station projects we have, as well as communication projects, make more funding available for those items. Overall, vehicles and equipment is looking at about a 14% increase or $102,000 year over year. Communication and IT, again, kind of increasing some of our communication costs align with what we're doing. And also a lot of the expenses for some of the communication infrastructure upgrades and things like that. Some of it we're addressing from a capital perspective. Some of it we're kind of including as our ongoing costs for maintaining our communication infrastructure and our technology. Over the last couple of years, there continues to be a big shift on software from being you buy a software package to it's, you know, a monthly subscription. And so that's also one of the biggest things that's driving our increases on our communication IT costs. Our dispatch is increasing 5% based on our IGA. So overall, we're looking at about a $200,000 increase on communication IT, or basically a little over 22%. $200,000.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we would, yeah, sorry.
Is that line item 6320? Is that what you're referring to?
6320 is the dispatch, correct. And that's just 5% based on our IGA. The other two areas that I was talking about are our actual software and support, as well as communication. I think one of the big things in the software is the plans review software, management software, that maybe Chief Booth can talk about briefly.
Talk about Unicity.
Yes.
One of the evaluations that we've had was after attending the ESO conference this past couple weeks ago. I think we're going to wait a year on Unicity to evaluate the systems that are already in place. And if it still doesn't work after going back through the cycle, be able to then revisit the need for a more modern software. But I think with what we learned at the conference recently and the capabilities that they have and then are going toward, we can continue to postpone that expenditure for at least a year.
And the purpose of this software is for what again?
So it's specific to inspections. It's just a more dynamic, built for inspectors and fire marshals.
And I wanted to touch on dispatch. So our intergovernmental agreement expires this year. Verde Chiefs met with the City of Cottonwood, and the decision was made to extend that contract for a year. Knowing that it was going up 5%, and the concern was our intent was to renegotiate the contract. Right now, a lot of the language speaks to us being a customer, and our desire is to reformat the IGA so that it references the fire districts as partners in the communication center. We have some big concerns on how they allocate capital and how they fund the center. The issue with us renegotiating this year, we didn't kick the can because we wanted to. It's currently, we've got city council members that are up for recall. You don't have a city manager in Cottonwood, and you don't have a police chief who manages the comm center. So anybody we'd be negotiating with doesn't have the power to negotiate with us. So we decided to extend it a year, and then once they seat people to make decisions, then we're going to go back and renegotiate the contract. Here's something more like the PRCC or Prescott Regional Communication Center, where we have more dogs in the fight, more of a voting voice, and so that'll be coming up next year.
Thank you. Meetings, travel, and training. I feel like it's a common theme, but some of this inflationary cost is definitely catching up to us. We made some changes for it last year. We're still continuing to see these increases. Is under our travel for training is one of the biggest factors driving additional costs within there. There is some additional training within some divisions, and so between that and those travel expenses, those are the main drivers. There's also kind of some expansion for public education in our pub ed program, as well as looking at some additional training opportunities specifically within some of our special programs. Overall, looking at a $97,000 increase in meetings and travel and training for next year.
And I noticed wildlife deployment is taken out of this category. Is that because it's put somewhere else?
Yeah, essentially it's flow into the bottom line as we're kind of looking at what we need to have in there. But ultimately, when I say bottom line, it's flowing to our capital. It's not our funding to capital line. It's not balancing any part of the budget, operating budget within there. As we've seen this past year, we've kind of had less of an active wildland season than we've had in the past. And so the last thing we ever want to do is get ourselves to a point where, we're balancing our budget on revenues such as wildland that aren't, sustainable.
Right, but these are the expenses that are coming out.
I'm sorry, say that again?
The expenses are coming out.
Correct.
As opposed to, I saw the revenue stuff, but So there's nothing there. So right now, if wildland needs anything, it comes right out of the capital fund.
No, essentially wildland expenses for that revenue are included in there for personnel. And then whatever that profit is will go to that bottom line or be reduced by whatever the expenses are above and beyond that.
We don't have any, what I'll call pre-cushion for it. We don't have any money set aside to cover costs up front before we get the revenue back.
We do, that's kind of what our fund balance is. So our fund, because wildland we don't rely on the tax levy revenue at all to fund any of the wildland. So when we go out on deployment, essentially, we are using, our cash that we have in the bank to essentially cover those costs until we get reimbursed. So obviously, if we don't see the revenue, we don't have any of the expense. But also, in order to cover that cost while we go out on deployment, similar to the way we cover the costs of operations until we see the first half taxes, we rely on our fund balance to cover that cost.
I'm curious why the change this year when we've put $60,000 to it in previous years.
One of the things I'm doing a little bit is kind of evaluating how much of a percentage we actually need to allocate there, based on kind of that continued inflationary cost. So I'm reallocating some of our percentages, but right now that 60,000, so to speak, is going down to our reserve fund, which is kind of there towards the bottom line. And then finally, managerial expenses, increase in professional services, mainly surrounding HR, investigations, mental health, as well as some IT support, surrounding the infrastructure upgrades and being able to ensure that our IT division has the support it needs to be able to execute those upgrades. Aside from just obviously somebody supplying that information and installing it, but more kind of like a project management type of approach with those upgrades. In addition, this next year we have an election coming up. And so last year we didn't have one. This year we need a budget for an election if we have to go to an election, based on, the amount of interest for the board.
What do you plan on budgeting for that?
We've got 33,000 in there for an election.
That's pretty standard.
That's about what we've seen in the past when we've had election. It's been a while since we've had one though, so.
Notice we've dropped out the advertising expense entirely.
Yes. It's a category that wasn't really being used, so, and some of that money's being shifted into kind of that public education line.
Between that and variety of staff members have gone to some different classes, courses, and content on advertising, so we can do a lot more in-house stuff and generate it without having a big think tank.
Any other questions on kind of these operating expenditures before we talk about revenue?
Just the legal expense, the outside professional fees is higher than, it's a decent raise, and what does that entail?
So a lot of that is being driven by, more professional fees around HR, as well as, so there's the Tiger-Craig Act, which requires us as an organization to provide counseling services for individuals. It's a state law, a state mandate, and actually ensuring there's funding in place for that as personnel need that.
And that number was that number could be wildly inaccurate. It was based on the past few years of usage for the Craig-Tiger Act. And to oversimplify it, if a member of Sedona Fire is seeking counseling services or mental health resources for life, then it goes through the insurance carrier. There are 5 events that can happen at work that are identified by the Craig-Tiger Act that statutorily the district has to fund the mental health resources. And so that budget line item is based on the past few years. Now, if we had a momentous tragedy in our organization and 10 people qualified for Craig Tiger, then that expense we would have to have some conversations, but that's just based on our best accurate assessment of the past few years.
I think one thing I just kind of want to point out as well to the board is, we're trying to come up with an educated assumption on what we're going to need in the future based on historical, based on, outside knowledge. But really, we don't have a blanket contingency line item in the budget, and we've always, we've got a healthy fund balance, and we rely on that to help grow this and get us to where we're at.
I think that's been our theme for the past several years.
It has.
What I'm not hearing is like the big jump in workers' comp costs, the big jump in pension costs, and things kind of have settled down a little bit. And the COLA has settled down way down compared to what it was last year.
Mm-hmm.
So, good things, I would imagine. It sounds like it's a good thing. It's just a matter of how you've reallocated funding for this up and coming fiscal year and understanding that process.
Right. Right. And some of it, some of the reallocation too has to do with, our areas of responsibility and trying to get some things in line with, this person actually runs or is in charge of that. And so getting things under that division, whereas before they were kind of in maybe not necessarily a no man's land, but you have people managing budgets that didn't fall under their division, or people, and making those realignments and getting things where they are now kind of based on our current org chart.
Okay. Let's get to the revenue side then.
All right. So, revenue, we're at an AV increase of 4.4%. That's $940,000 at our current tax rate. Don't think that was the totality of the commercial assessment ratio impact. Remember, one of the things the legislator did in 2022, it was 2022, they authorized the increase in tax rate cap from 325 to 337 to 350 to 375 for FY25. But in doing so, lowered the commercial assessment from 18 eventually all the way down to 15. Thus far, we've essentially, from that, we've lost about $325,000 in commercial tax revenue, which is being now made up for, shifted over then to the residential, the homeowners. Looking at our non-levy revenue, based on where our current ambulance revenue is this year and where we're projecting, we're actually going to hold ambulance revenue flat at 2.3%. Communication rent is at $200,000, which is a decrease of about 15%. A lot of that has to do with we essentially had revenue on the books that we weren't receiving through one of our tower leases. So that's now, obviously, their equipment's been removed, and obviously now pulling that revenue out of the budget that they're no longer going to be paying. At least they haven't been paying us. It definitely won't be paying us.
They pulled it out of the budget 2 years ago.
Yeah, they pulled it out of their budget 2 years ago.
Do we have a means of aggregating that anyway? Legal or?
We are currently working to attempt to remedy that, and more to come when something occurs. They have the company has been bought and sold, I think, 4 times now, and so it's chasing the tail to find the head.
I'm curious about the decrease in CRR revenue.
There's 2 of them. Oh, CPR and your
CPR, yeah. Yeah, lowering the CRR revenue is again just bringing it back down in line with what we've been realizing and what our projections have looked like on that line item. And so that's why there's that lowering of that that budget item on the revenue side.
They were a little bit on the higher side this past, just because of a catch-up and trying to get things back on board.
So, and then as we progress through and reevaluate, the fee schedule in alignment with the new code adoptions, it could fluctuate as well, working with Gabe and his team and kind of doing a survey of what others in the region are trying to align everybody.
And it looks too like we've dropped training revenue.
Yes, so training revenue is another one where we've kind of had a placeholder in there that died really during COVID. And currently this year, we've not received any training revenue. And so again, bringing that number back in line more with budget. Or I should say, reality.
Reality.
Yes, with reality. One thing I will point out on interest income, we're actually projected to do about $500,000 this year in interest income. We're conservatively plugging in, $250,000 of that, just because there's so much unknown at this point. The Fed's goal was 2% inflation. We're at 3.8%, and rates haven't increased, which you would expect they would have, but, there's a lot of reasons why they probably haven't, and we'll leave those up to our own thoughts and opinions. And so, I don't anticipate we're going to see any rate decreases anytime soon, but I also don't want us to rely upon that income, because it's not predictable. If we see something occur drastically within the economy and the Fed drops rates drastically, we'll immediately lose that revenue because we don't have any long-term investments. All of our money that's managed by the county treasurer is all in short-term money markets and CDs, but we will see a pretty instantaneous decrease in that income if that were to occur. In addition, some of the miscellaneous revenues, that includes things like our Prop 207 money, some donation income that we get, and so that's making up another $439,000. Overall, we're decreasing our non-levy revenue by $329,000. But really what's driving that is the lowering the wildland revenue. Because last year we just didn't see a lot. There's a good chance we're not going to see a lot in the next year, and so don't want to kind of keep having those budget variances, even though, again, it doesn't affect us operationally, but just more from an analytic standpoint and a budget actual standpoint.
What makes you say that we may not see much of an increase?
I rely on the experts in that arena. And so there's things on, and Chief, please step in as I talk here about operational things, but some is, personnel deploy. A lot of it is the moisture, the winter moisture and things like that. Obviously decreases the likelihood of large fires within our area. And so kind of in line with what we saw this year, we're anticipating a kind of a little bit of a repeat. Thank you, Chief.
Todd, 2 minutes. Baton Chief Miranda.
I'm Todd Miranda. I'm the baton chief for BC. I'm also Wildland, BC. You guys probably saw John Pruitt. He's the state FMO talking about fire season here in Arizona. They're predicting an above average fire season in Arizona. That's going to be for the southern parts of the state, the desert, when the grass, the pine fuels grown up, because we did get a pretty good moisture down over the last 6 months. So above the rim, different story, probably more of a typical season. So every year, Oil usually does like a kind of an outlook thing. We just had our team meeting in Albuquerque, and Montana looks busy, Oregon looks busy, Texas already had a 1 million acre fire, that's pretty unheard of. The Southeast, probably not so much. Minnesota looks busy. Historically, well, the last 3 years with COVID and other things that were just kind of going on with staffing, we just tend to use it out. We're sitting fully staffed for the first time in a long time. I've got a pile of red cards that I'm handing out right now, so we're ready to go. The state also did increase, for the first time in 6 years, the amount of revenue we can generate by actually adjusting inflation a little bit. Probably not as much as I would have liked, but that's okay. So the monies you see there, the $400,000, that encompasses everything. So that's never hit that much money in actual revenue, but that also increased, is there to cover our wages and spend them. State has gotten better about reimbursing us more effectively and quickly. They have a new system, it's the filer billing software suite. So we're able to turn the bills faster, so we are getting reimbursed at a much quicker rate than we've historically had. So we're geared up. Guys are ready. Refreshers are done. We just got to polish some red cards and get the new hires through their field day. But the engines are ready to roll. The lens is ready to roll, and we got guys that want to go. So I don't think we've ever hit more than $250,000 in actual revenue, but fingers crossed.
And so,
depending on how you look at it.
so to dissect that further, a busy southern Arizona wildfire season generally is guys will shoot down there for a week and then it dies out. And so we have a pocket of folks with work-life balance and their families shooting out of town for a week is a very viable option for them. So we have a group of folks like that. And then we've got a group of folks that really enjoy those Montana trips or 2-3 weeks. And we've as Todd said, we're staffed at the point now where we have that more flexibility than we have in the past few years. So we have groups of folks that like the quick shots down for a week, sweating in the desert, and we have folks that love going away for 2-3 weeks at a time. So dependent on what Mother Nature does, we are prepared, and so it could be, but the prediction for large scale complex fires in our region is low this year. Low to normal, and normal's very manageable with regional resources. A lot of small fires that are increased frequency of small fires, but stuff that local resources jump on and hit 2-3 days at a time, some of them.
I expect us to be in southern New Mexico.
Todd, you're always right.
No.
Thank you.
Todd.
Thank you.
Thank you, Todd.
Else for us, Gabe?
So moving into, the one thing that we started doing this a couple of years ago, and I really like this slide. So where, for a while there, if you remember when we started doing this slide, when we looked at the years prior, we had a higher number and we were dropping. So for projecting the end of this year, I'll start at the bottom and work our way up on the far right there. We're projecting kind of an unrestricted fund balance about $10.6 million. That puts us over our GFOA recommended fund balance of just over $6 million. So one of the things we'll probably look at doing is transferring some of those funds to our capital, especially with, again, stations and the infrastructure needed for communications. We have currently projected at 4.9 in the capital fund at the end of this year without that transfer occurring. We have $750,000 in end leave liability reserve put aside. And that's, again, if we have a large influx of retirees and we can't fund their, or it'd be kind of a significant impact to fund their payout out of our general fund or operating account, we have money set aside to cover that. And then finally, the last piece of our total coffers is the $2 million that the board has restricted as essentially our emergency fund or contingency fund. So overall, very healthy fund balance. And again, why we're not looking at plugging in a contingency line item and levying the taxpayer for contingency, because we've created our own contingency that we don't need to go after the taxpayer for. So with that, the last thing I have for you, and I'll get this out to you after the meeting. I had some changes that I wanted made to this before it went into the packet, but I wanted to get you the rest of the packet on Friday. So here, Director McNeil really likes this one, and so I think it does show it is a good representation, not only of what we plan for, what we look like we're going to do, and what we're asking to go to. And so we could see that right now we've got our revenue from a tax standpoint We typically collect 100% of our tax revenue, or 99.9, so we're projecting we're gonna collect all of that. There's some of the decline in the communication rents we discussed. As you can see, ambulance service, is, you know, really right at what we're predicting for budget this year. Non-district fires, because I didn't talk to Todd about his prediction for the end of the month, right now is, you know, looking at what we've done thus far. And then our other income, which is our investment income, what we see from, you know, insurance reimbursements, our Prop 207 money, all of that is kind of out driving what that shortfall was on the wildland that we were predicting before I talked to Todd. And so that's where revenues look like are coming in at. On the expense side, you'll see we budgeted 11.3 in personnel, kind of predicting around 10.6 million for personnel. A lot of that is because of those vacancies we had earlier in the year, and from the retirees before the new hires got on board. But we're looking at that increase for next year, showing the full year of those people now being on board, as well as the pay increases that we discussed earlier in benefit costs. Buildings and land, as you can see, I mentioned a lot of the things that we're increasing there were some inflationary stuff. And so we're at $450,000 that we're projected to do this year, going to $475,000. Vehicles and equipment a little different, mainly also because of that lease also isn't in this year's numbers. They'll be in next year's. So going from $675,000 to $812,000. Communication and IT, again, seeing we originally budgeted $909,000. We're projecting to do a little over $1 million in there. And so the ask for next year is 1.1. Travel and training is a little bit of an anomaly because there is some added training that's also going into that, in addition to the cost for travel and what that's going to look like next year.
And on travel and training, we're not going to Hawaii. All the division heads, you know, and Chief Baker's discussed it quite a bit in previous board meetings, but all the folks that were trained to teach all our stuff are leaving. And so over the next couple of years, we're going to have an increase in training to get new people trained up to run the programs that are being vacated by folks retiring. And so it was anticipated, and it's just, we're here now.
And managerial, just right at about $700,000, larger increase there, from what we're projecting. But again, we're really more looking at budget and having the funding in there for some of the HR stuff and the support that we're talking about, as well as the election costs. And so, you know, with that, and then the final piece is obviously the funding, to our capital, and it looks like those numbers, yeah, they are footnoting there. So, and then we got our capital funding piece, and really what wasn't included, and I apologize, was the difference. So we're projected to do $23,832,404 with $22,256,088 in expense. So essentially the 1.4 to capital, plus growing our unrestricted fund balance based on where we're projecting out, another $1.5 million. And again, my recommendation, especially we've started work on the capital plan. We've got some more meetings we're going to set for this month to refine some of the capital. But at the May board meeting, we'll come forward with not only the funding, the capital plan for you to look at, but also more or less a recommended motion to and an agenda item to actually shift funds from our general fund to our capital fund, based on the surpluses this year and some of those historical surpluses.
So if we have another budget workshop between now and the May meeting, will we be able to see the capital plan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll make sure we schedule that at a point where, you know, we can have that done as well.
And really, the biggest hang up is truth in some of the station construction based on best predictions, and a realignment of our vehicle fleet because of costs and then build times and everything. We're waiting on some vendors to get some, hey, what's the real story now type of stuff.
Gabe, thank you for the projection. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
Yeah.
On this budget for this fiscal year, as it looks in the 10-year projections that we've had, I know I don't have it before me, where is it fitting? Is it slightly above, slightly below?
So I have not, worked much on the 10-year projection yet, but where this budget is at, actually what I will tell you is, we're still looking good on our 10-year projection, but really I think what you're asking is, what did we project we were gonna do this year and what does it look like we're gonna do?
As compared to the projection that was created several years ago.
Yes, well, give me 1 second, I'll pull that up. You want me to look back several years, or you just want me to look back last year?
Last couple of years.
So if I go back to, let's go to 2020. I haven't mentioned I highly support the IT infrastructure upgrades.
I think there's a few people. Go back to Josh's highway analogy. We're on a two-lane dirt road and we're putting in a 6-laner asphalt.
Any other questions while this is loading?
Oh, it's loading. Well, I think while that's loading, we have a need to have that line item by line item, as you provided here, workshop sometime between now and the next meeting, the 21st.
Yes.
In addition to give us the extra documentation that you're talking about preparing for us. Chief, if I could ask of you, if staff could forward it, I need to meet with the dates probably that first week of May,
All right, we'll send out a need to meet.
so that we can look at that. Actually, between now and the 15th. I don't know if you want to send it out for a full month, but we're
Send a bunch of dates.
yeah, so we can take a look at that, so we can come back and sit down and go over these very things, and as we have in the past, and help us better understand what some of these line items are, and in addition to that, further explanation on from Gabe on what's what on that. So on the new documentation, the projections that he's talking about.
Yeah, so, to kind of look back, in 2020, we projected that we were gonna need, in fiscal year 2025, we were gonna need to levy $19.5 million at a tax rate of $2.59, $2.60. Which, in the assessed value at that point would have been $753 million. We are at assessed value of $755 million, tax rate of $2.70, and $2.4 million in property tax revenue. So on essentially a $20 million budget, we're on the tax piece side, we're off $900,000.
That's pretty close.
In 5 years.
That's within the limits, I would say.
And in 2020, when we adopted the budget, that was, I mean, time eludes me. Did COVID happen in 2020 or 2021?
March 2020.
March of 2020. So we hadn't seen the impact of
Yeah.
the inflation when we had that prediction set.
And I bring that up only because when the community looks at this and reviews this and sees where we're at right now as compared to where we thought we would be several years ago, and to find out that we're relatively on target, it just shows that we're through our financial group here, that we're doing our part.
That was a good question. An exercise there. I didn't know the answer until we looked at it, so.
Does that conclude your presentation?
That concludes my presentation.
Okay, is there any questions for
Thank you.
Gabe? So with that direction, again, to the chief, just have staff forward us, they need to meet so we can have that workshop, and I would assume that would include Gabe, yourself. I don't know if, any other staff members you think we would need.
Don't do that. And before we conclude, I just wanted to, I want to make sure Gabe wasn't going to cover it, but, as you have a chance to dive into the budget detail pages deeper, it was brought to my attention that the substantial changes to some of the wages in some of the different categories. I'll use mine, for example. Mine went up substantially. What we did is I sat down with Gabe and Sarah, what was it, 2 weeks ago. It was recent time again, but we really broke out with the restructuring of the district, moving Kim to my budget, and then who manages who and who works with who is where we place those folks. And so where you'll see a decrease to the administrative wages budget, there's an increase to HR because of moving Branda and things like that. So if there are any more clarifying questions with those, we can answer those. I can answer those anytime or at the workshop.
We'll take a look as we go through this and maybe focus some of our focal points on those very things. All right, well, thank you very much. You have your direction from the board, and without any further ado, we can move forward with the rest of the agenda for the regular meeting. Thank you, Gabe. Thank you. Okay, our regular business for this meeting, do we have any speakers from the public? Okay. Our consent agenda, including February 13th, 2024 special workshop meetings that were tabled from last month's meeting to this one, March 5th, 2024 special workshop minutes, March 19th, 2024 regular and special meeting minutes. I move to approve the consent agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the consent agenda is approved. Next item on the agenda is the financial report and updates from our finance director, Gabe Boldra.
All right, well, Mr. Chair, members of the board, you have the well, you have the financial report in your packet.
We do.
All right, give me a second. Kim didn't think I was going to show up today, so she took me out. All right. No, thank you. Okay, so.
You want to end this right now?
So March 2024 financials. So starting off, tax labor revenue, we brought in $491,000. We were projecting $837,000, so we do have a lag for the month. And I will point out, you also see we have kind of a lag year to date on that. And so I don't get too worried at this point. Really, if we're sitting here in May and we're still behind, because by May we should have collected all of our first half taxes, then we'll start to get a little worried. But, I anticipate within the end of this month, we should catch up pretty nicely on that. Non-labor revenues at $287,000. That is over budget by $19,000. And so ambulance revenue is one of the main drivers of that overage. And so that's what's kind of helping kind of that non-labor revenue for the month. And so, as I said, year to date, we're looking like we're going to be on track, but not really at a point where I think we've got a number that we need to increase for the budgeting. So I'm kind of tying both of them in. Personnel was at $1,255,000. That was under budget due to salary and benefit savings. Buildings and land was slightly over by about $2,400. What was driving? Can you? It's there, so it's showing the screen. So yeah, there it goes. There it goes. So that's, over budget by $2,400. There's some asphalt, and electrical repairs that kind of cause that variance there. Vehicles and equipment at $57,975, slight overage of about $1,900. Communication IT for the month is actually under budget, and really, so kind of good to see that. However, you know, that managerial, which also includes our meetings and training, was over due to some rope rescue training, Swiftwater, as well as the travel associated with those, some of the training classes. Year to date, we're at $17.5 million in total revenue. As I kind of mentioned, that variance is predominantly being driven by property tax collection. We're $430,000 under where we projected to be at this point on property tax collection. Again, on $15 million, it's not a huge percentage, but it is something to kind of keep an eye on at this point. And then we'll worry, like I said, if we hit April or May and we haven't seen those collections start to come in, because that could indicate that we are starting to see delinquencies within the district. Non-levy revenue, as I mentioned, is kind of right in line with budget. We're about $125,000 over. Our interest income is really what's driving that overage on the non-levy revenue. So that's kind of offsetting both the wildland deployment costs, or the lack of wildland deployment that we saw earlier in the year on the non-levy revenue side. Expenses are at $15.2 million, which is under budget by $1,091,000. Personnel is the main driver of that savings. And then buildings and land is over by $17,034 year to date. Vehicles and equipment coming in under budget by $35,300. Communication and IT with some of those earlier expenses for equipment, as well as removing that non-paying participant from the tower. We incurred some expenses for that this year. And then finally, managerial, which also includes our travel and training, is under budget by $67,000 through the month of March. As far as a breakdown, we've expended 69% with 31% remaining. If we spent everything we had budgeted at this point, we'd be at 75%. So that difference between 75 and 69 is reflective of that $1 million that we're under budget year to date. As far as where our money's gone, 85% have gone to personnel, followed by 7% to operations, 5% to communication, and 3% to managerial. And then finally, year over year, we ended the month with $17.4 million total cash on hand, which is an increase of the $14.3 from last year at this same time. Other assets decreased from $25.6 to $25.2. A lot of that is a function of our annual depreciation on our capital assets. And total liabilities increased from $32.8 to $33 million. And pension is one of those factors that has impacted our total liabilities year over year. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions on the finance report.
Questions? Yep. No? Okay, I don't see any questions. So with that being said, I move to approve the March 2024 finance report as presented. Do I have a second?
Second that.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the March 2024 finance report is approved as presented. Thank you. Okay. Next item on the agenda is the staff items, which are the chief's report. Chief Mazulis.
Yes, I'm going to deviate from the order. We've got firefighter Dietrich here, and in the interest of getting her back to work, we'll start with Chief Baker.
All right. That was unexpected.
Come on up.
Mr. Chair, Board, thanks again for having me this evening. I'll try to be brief so we can get to the much anticipated presentation from firefighter Dietrich on one of the classes that we were able to send her to a couple months ago with an emphasis on recruitment and retention of female firefighters in the fire service. So good timing with our hiring, being posted for the new hire candidates earlier this month. So I'll try to keep my report brief and get it over to her. As you're all aware, on April 27th, the active assailant training in Cottonwood, we had a regional meeting yesterday with law enforcement and fire agencies. And the training sounds like it's going to be pretty robust, more than I had anticipated when I tried to initiate this, so that's a good thing. Upwards of 20 agencies involved. We currently are sitting at 40 to 50 volunteers for role players during the event. And the emphasis of this event will be to test our regional response, and test the system itself. So building in realistic response times should an event take place in Cottonwood or Sedona, and build those response times into the drill, so whoever's in command of those drills and responders of those drills can feel what that delayed response will actually feel like, and induce some stress in there. So excited about the opportunity. It's nice to see all the regional players involved and everybody's support in making this drill as successful as possible, and learning some valuable lessons moving forward for us, as far as future trainings and policy development. So hope to see a few of you there. I know the Cottonwood City Council will have some members there, and I believe the Sedona City Council will have some members there to view as well. So
What date is that?
it's April 27th, and it'll be in Cottonwood at the Cottonwood Christian Church at 406 South 6th Street. The drill starts itself at 9. We're asking everybody there be there between 8 and 8:30 so we can get set up, do a safety briefing, walk through, and get everybody in position before the drill starts. So there'll be a special designated area for council members and governing members with representatives from each agency there with you to kind of explain what's occurring and what's happening as the drill evolves. So feel free to come out. We should have lunch there as well. Blue card training, I think I mentioned it the last meeting, but Chief Lakowski is one of our blue card instructors. We recently sent Battalion Chief Lewis through the blue card instructor training down in Phoenix. I'll be heading out this fall to get instructor certified for this, but we started revamping the blue card system, which we adopted about 10 years ago, to include quarterly CEs. So we just finished the quarterly CEs, hitting all 15 companies, with a 2 to 4 hour training, depending on the companies and the questions after the training. Well received, extremely beneficial, and again, the blue card system just standardizes process for responding to specifically structure fire, residential fires in our district. Same terminology, same process, regardless of who arrives on scene, and the expectations are the same. So again, going through all 15 companies with that quarterly CE was well received, extremely beneficial, and we look forward to future opportunities continuing this on a quarterly basis. With Blue Card, we also were able to put 10 or 11 of our newer hires, meaning 5 to 7 years time frame, on the job through their initial 40-hour computer-based training for Blue Card, which was a requirement for them to complete prior to the in-person training. All of them completed that, and then we had a 24-hour in-person training Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of last week, 8 to 10 hours a day. It was probably closer to 30 hours than it was 24, where each of them had an opportunity to fill various roles, responding to residential, commercial assignments, meaning apartment complexes, businesses, restaurants, and single-family residents varying in size from single to 3-story homes. So we actually set up the old battalion chief rig, had a projector for them to see, had the rest of the class in a classroom so they couldn't see them, and got them on the radio performing scene size-ups and ordering resources and deploying those resources in the appropriate manner. So for me personally, going through that class 10 years ago was probably the best class I've ever had in the fire service, and one that I was able to utilize the next day after the class. So allowed them the opportunity for that, not only making them more efficient in their job, but learning that next level or 2 or 3 levels ahead of them, and understanding what everybody on that team's going through, and being able to anticipate the needs of the IC before they're even asked. So very beneficial training. So we completed all that last week. BC Miranda just hit on it, but he and his group of instructors are wrapping up the wildland refreshers for this year. He's done a great job with his group of employees enhancing that refresher. In years past, it was a refresher, and you know, it was beneficial, but not as interactive as it is now. So in that refresher, much like Blue Card, individuals are put into seats where they have to give initial size ups for wildfires with a concentration on fires in district. So initial response to those wildfires with the limited resources we have in our area. So kudos to him and his group for getting that refresher through. Talked to the group that I went through with as well as others, and again, well received. And we're looking at enhancing it even further next year and building it out, much like we do the Blue Card system, but specific to wildland. So I know he just spoke about it too, getting the red cards out and getting everybody geared up for the season. And should we get called, hopefully with staffing and the refreshers done, we'll be able to get some resources out the door. We did finish the ROVA training, which is our UTV training for the agency we've adopted here at Sedona Fire to certify our individuals to operate in district and out of district for the UTVs. So he briefly spoke about the REMS deployments. So that is a requirement for the NWCG to have that certification for us to go out on those REMS deployments. So we were able to put, on a 3-year rotation, getting each battalion through the ROVA training. So the instructors had a 2-day refresher training 2 weeks ago, and we were able to get the shift that was up and ready, getting ready to expire, to get them all through and get them recertified. So that's included on those red cards to make sure we're meeting those requirements to get resources out the door. 6-month evaluation, so that's coming up in 2 weeks. So we'll be going out and evaluating probationary firefighters that are already up there 6 months, which is hard to believe. So we go out, they are required to conduct a written test and then a series of what we call individual company standards, or ICSs, 3 to 4 of those ICSs. As long as they're proficient in those skills and pass the written test, they'll move on to their second 6 months in their probationary period and open a 12-month task book at that time. What that 6-month evaluation does is it opens them up for the availability to start working overtime and backfill, which helps with staffing. And also recently, talking with BC Miranda and Chief Coyle, allow them to get exposure to some of these wildland off-district deployments, which is deviating from what we've done in the past. But as long as they're proficient in their skills and performing well and basically have their captains and battalion chief's blessing, if they're interested in getting off district and experiencing that wildland arena, we're going to start allowing that for them as well. So again, added resources. Hopefully we'll get added revenue by getting engines out the door this year. Completed one of our 12-month evals. So we've got 2 individuals that are at their 1-year mark here next week. I was able to go out and evaluate one of those individuals yesterday, and I'll be evaluating the next individual tomorrow. So if all goes well, which I anticipate it will, we'll have 2 more firefighters off of probation here next week. So the one I did yesterday performed extremely well, and I anticipate the one tomorrow will as well too. So kudos to the crews for putting in the time and training with those individuals and preparing them, and kudos to the individuals for being prepared for that test. So we try to make it as realistic as possible and stress them out as much as we can. And they perform well. They're doing a great job. We're in effort to continue strengthening our relationship with Yavapai College. We've had a couple meetings with them. I coordinated with the fire science coordinator and one of their academic advisors to do site visits to Sedona Fire. So one thing that we struggle with our employees is getting time to meet with some advisors at various colleges throughout the nation. So trying to strengthen that relationship with Yavapai College, I've scheduled 3 dates in May where they're going to come here at Station 1, working with the BCs. And if individuals would like to come in and meet with them, we'll rove those individuals over. They anticipate a 15 to 20-minute evaluation where they can bring in prior learning, other colleges they went to, classes that they've taken, the National Fire Academy, and see if any of that can be transferred to credit for Yavapai College and their specific degree program which they're pursuing. So a unique opportunity. Hopefully it's beneficial. Yavapai College does offer a couple bachelor's degrees now as well. So I'm hoping that through these meetings we can get more of our employees on a trajectory to complete those associate's degrees, certificates, or even a bachelor's degrees, which will then enable them the opportunity for future promotions down the road. So free for us, free for the employees. So again, it's nice to have a local college that's willing to come out and do that with us and partner with us in those efforts. Regional training opportunities, I'm setting up, monthly meetings with the training officers at the other organizations. I'm in the process of doing that. Hopeful that May will be our first one, and we're gonna start meeting monthly and continue discussing opportunities where we can conduct regional trainings to strengthen those regional partnerships, throughout our area and enabling our employees to be more familiar with them should we show up on a large-scale incident. It's not the first time they've met one of them and first time they've worked with them. So, continue looking for those opportunities moving forward again. Hopefully next month we'll have our first meeting and then get those rolling on a more regular basis. As far as wellness updates, functional movement screenings, it's an annual screening we do for our employees, with firefighter Feeney, who's our wellness program coordinator. We go around and screen all of our employees to include administrative staff. It's voluntary if they want to go through it, and it's an opportunity for them to identify some areas where, you know, they may have some flexibility issues or tightness issues, and more or less an injury prevention screening where we can help them out with. I had the opportunity last week to sit down with, on Zoom, with Kiona and a rep from Ready Rebound, which is a company we use for injured employees to get them into MRIs quicker and get them back on the floor quicker. But Ready Rebound is starting a proactive program that does the same thing that the FMS screens that we currently do, except they've enhanced it by using a computer. And we record the employees, and the computer analyzes the employee's position and strength on a series of exercises, and then provides feedback using AI or the computer technology they have. So I'm going to set up a meeting with Chief Missoula and Kiona and see what that looks like for us moving forward. It's a relatively inexpensive cost for the potential benefit of reducing one injury would pay for itself for multiple years. So looking to couple that with our current FMS screenings and just enhance employee health and hopefully injury prevention, therefore continuing to see a decrease in workers' compensation rates. And equipment replacement for the wellness centers is just based on our capital plan that we've included. Got a couple purchases coming up this year. What I'm trying to do is get a replacement schedule for exercise machines and treadmills and everything, and get them on a rotation for replacement versus waiting for one of them to break and then trying to scramble to get them in and can't find parts or can't get anything in for months. So trying to be proactive with that. And again, working with firefighter Feeney, who's been helping me out a lot on that and making sure that we're staying ahead of the curve on that. So unless there's any questions on that, we'll move to the highlight of the training presentation this month. Anything from the board?
I just have one question.
Yes, sir.
You hit pretty hard on blue cards and some on red cards, but whose requirements are these cards? Is it a state or national?
So the red cards are, the NWCG, National Wildfire Coordinating Group, is the regulatory body that the Forest Service recognizes, and that's what we use for red cards. So when Todd speaks to red cards, it means that fitness-wise and education-wise or training-wise, there's dozens, hundreds of classes. Sedona fire employees are qualified to the federal standards, so that when it's a like. If we say they're an engine boss, then they're a Fed-recognized engine boss. And then blue card is a system that's been adopted nationwide. It's not regulated by any government body, but it's a take on the red card. And some structural firefighters, Chief Brunacini from Phoenix, started the program. And essentially what it is it's a standardized approach using ICS incident command philosophies to how we approach structural firefighting, so that if you pulled our tapes from our folks going on scene of fires, in the past it was, there's this thing and it's on fire and send more trucks, to I've got a 4-story residential assisted living facility. It was all over the place. The blue card standardizes what and how we say what we need on the radio when we get to a structure fire or any other incident.
Yeah, it's really standardized that terminology and process and procedure moving forward as far as, ordering additional resources and deployment model for resources on scene.
Gotcha. Super. Thank you. For our next presenter, do you want to bring out the podium for her to stand behind, or
do you want to
rather than just stand out there?
Got it, Dory?
loud, talk normal or loud, or you try to put your mic?
Before Cascade gets started, I just wanted to tell her thank you for coming in and doing this. I could have reported out on what she reported to me, but I thought it'd be more beneficial for you all to hear it directly from her and what she learned attending, it was the first inaugural, right?
Yeah,
A
it was
conference?
the Women's Firefighters Symposium.
So,
He found all the information for us. Like, you wanna go? Yeah.
Sure. Just bring the mic up to your mouth, so there you go, kind of face in, and we can hear you loud and clear.
Yes.
all yours.
All right, so, like Chief Baker said, I participated in the first Women's Firefighters Symposium. It was in Gilbert, Arizona, back in February. There was a lot of presenters there, and the main lady that did this recruitment and retention, she's actually a division chief in Alameda County in, California. So she's been in the fire service for like 35 to 40 years. She's seen a lot. So to the public, it is believed that female firefighters have existed in the United States for about 200 years. The first female firefighter, they say, was Molly Williams, who served as a slave with the Oceanus Engine Company in 1815. But that is kind of a false narrative, because it was actually illegal for women to be firefighters in the United States until like 1970s. So our actual first female firefighter was 1974. She also became the first female battalion chief, obviously.
Yeah.
So since then, the national population of women in the career structural firefighting has scarcely risen above 4%. So it's been about 50 years, and it's only about 4% of all firefighters are female. Some places don't even have female firefighters. Think about so, and wildland firefighters, there's actually a lot more females in wildland and in volunteer departments, more so them than there is in the career departments, and I think it's a cultural thing that has been happening. And so she focused on comparing recruitment versus retention. So hiring more women is usually the goal of policymakers. So the issue remains that few women apply for the fire service job. The culture needs to be changed and more welcoming to the idea of including a sisterhood within the brotherhood. So what do you guys all think of when you think of a firefighter? Corey, what do you think of?
For me, just someone that responds to emergencies throughout the community.
Yeah. I mean, when I was little, you think of big, strong men, someone willing to help, someone with compassion, problem solver, someone who will put your life before their own. So we need to change this narrative. It's not only men, it's men and women, all sorts of people. The public endearing traits that a firefighter has are traditionally feminine domestic traits, which is kind of strange. But these traits are compassion, helping the elderly and the children, cooking, and keeping a clean house. Like all our stations you see, super clean. In the public's eyes, firefighters are selfless and approachable public servants. So firefighters need physical, mental, and emotional tenacity. These qualities do not belong just to one sex. It's obviously both. So the solution to improve women to men ratios in the fire service should shift from recruitment and focus more on the retention aspect. We need to focus on improved quality of life, which is addressed through the organization's retention policies. Next slide. So these are the four main obstacles that were pointed out that are a problem with integrating women in fire service. Gender-neutral physical fitness exams, parental leave issues, sociocultural dynamics, and promotional obstacles. Okay. So the gender-neutral physical fitness exam is kind of hard to change because women and men have to do the exact same job in the fire service.
So this is the first form of washout for women in the fire service, including the initial fitness performance test and the recruit academy. When you compare the physical requirements of the fire service to the requirements of military and law enforcement, there are some very notable differences. At the entry level of those other careers, men and women have different physical requirements to do the job, unlike fire service. So the fire service can be compared to the military special operations branches and law enforcement tactical teams, because those are gender neutral fitness tests, just like ours is. What we use is the CPAT, and that stands for Candidate Physical Agility Test. It was created because it provides a non-discriminatory model of fitness testing that replicates job tasks. This test, Sedona requires, but not all agencies do, basically is a 50-pound vest, and then you have to do a bunch of different activities that they say is required by a firefighter on the job. So they have you do a stair climb where they add an extra 25 pounds on you. So it's 75 pounds, and you have to do a stair climb for 2 minutes. You do a hose drag, equipment, carry, ladder raise, extension, forcible entry, search, and rescue, do dummy drag, and ceiling breach and pull. And all of this has to be done within 10 minutes and 20 seconds. So the washout part of that, for women compared to men, almost 95% of men succeed during the physical test, but 50% of female candidates actually succeed. So the lack of access to applicable fire service tools often eliminates many women at the entry level. So I think that in the recruitment aspect, we can get out there, show people that you can probably do this job. This is the requirements. This is how much you have to lift. These are the kinds of tools you're going to have to learn how to use. It'll help build the confidence in the community for women to actually want to apply. The second one, next slide, parental leave issues. So there's a lack of supportive protocols around pregnancy, birth, and breastfeeding. There's leave limitations before and after the birth of the child. Women have a smaller voice in their agencies and labor unions. Family planning is a deterrent to recruitment and can cause for early departure for women in the fire service. So to focus on the first part, when a female firefighter is pregnant, the lack of supportive protocols. Finding and having uniforms that fit women is an ongoing issue. And that's not the problem usually of the agencies, it's the companies that make clothing. There's a lot of options that are not for women, they're all men. And this can be for just normal uniforms like these or turnouts. So there's actually somebody at the symposium that was advertising that they actually create women turnouts now that will actually fit a lot better. Not so straight, you know. There are absolutely no options for maternity clothes. I actually looked at that, but I figured blue pants would work.
If it could.
Yeah. And then many agencies do not have protocols or policies for pregnancy, birth, or breastfeeding. We have a policy that was recently revamped that I think Steve Lewis fixed, but I don't think we have a lactation policy yet.
You're working on it, sir.
Baseball created. But there's a bunch of different things, more so than just like when you need to get off the truck, what you need to do. And so that's kind of a deterrent for women. The lack of comprehensive maternity policy, yeah, I just said that. Okay, now it's next. Sorry, I'm doing it wrong. Can you go back one? So the leave limitations. When a female firefighter is pregnant, she will be placed on light duty at some point during her pregnancy. Here, they let me choose for when I'm going to do it, so I'm going to wait till my third trimester. I'm almost there. And for those 3 months, I'll be put on a 40-hour work week, so I'll be missing out on the $48.96 pay. I'll just go to the 40-hour work week. And other places, they don't actually have light duty, not everywhere, but some places don't have light duty, so it's important to have those kind of policies in place. And I could have chose to be off the truck within the very beginning of my pregnancy. I just chose. In Sedona, the FMLA can be used for up to 12 weeks. The leave will come out of the firefighter's sick leave and or vacation leave for specific bank. The amount of leave a person has depends greatly on the individual's age and time of service. Other agencies across the country have changed their leave policies to where the leave comes from a separate bank, not their sick leave or vacation leave. And it can range from, they'll give them 6 weeks. It's not included in any of their leave banks. Actually, it's a separate account. Sometimes it's 6, sometimes it's 12. It just depends on where you are. Once a person's leave is all used up, they either request for leave donations, you can request it at the point of time whenever you run out of leave. You can go unpaid for the rest of the 12 weeks, or you can return to work early. A female firefighter with a healthy birth needs recovery time and to bond with the baby. Unlike the male, obviously, because they're not carrying a child. If there are any complications or C-section, there's a longer recovery period for female firefighters. There may be times when the firefighter comes back on light duty initially, if there's issues like that. They did give me an option back here. But in other places, there's more times than not, new mothers will go on leave without pay. Huge issues for people that need the dual income household. And then women have the next slide. So we're gonna hit on the sociocultural dynamics. Gender identity is one of them, and there are conflicts for women trying to integrate into a man's world, quote unquote. Over half the fire agencies in the United States do not have women on staff. A deterrent for women entering the fire service is a frat house culture and good old boy network. There's social outgrouping and isolation in a predominantly male workplace. Firefighter humor, hazing, and rites of passage have long defined the profession of popular culture. So women as outsiders create an unknown dynamic, and even well-intending men may exclude women from play to avoid offending or upsetting her, which is just like the normal little jokes and hazing, but it's not. It's like a fun, lighthearted way to be a part of the fire. And then often the unintended consequences that the woman feels rejected or excluded. It is often said that if you're not being teased, then other firefighters do not like you. There's also, can you go back? People, and this, I'm not saying this is here, but I'm saying in like general what they've collected data for. So there's been people who have refused to work for or with a female colleague, or they've been denied bids to certain fire stations because they say, well, we don't want girls here. And that can be a big issue for training and career advancement. And it can also lead to promotional obstacles. And a really big one that happens in bigger agencies is there's failures to take complaints seriously, resulting in discrimination, sexual harassment, assault, or rape cases being unreported or unpunished. The promotional obstacles, denial of bids to several busy firehouses, we know that, needing to outperform the competition. And this isn't just for men, so women are actually more rough on other women than men are. So having other women in the workplace can create toxic levels of competition and distrust. So there have been many incidents with women sabotaging other women in the fire service. So it's important for women to stand by each other, support each other, that's in everything, but also the fire service is included. Distrust from subordinates unaccustomed to seeing women in a role of tactical leadership. There's just an unconscious bias normalization of misogyny throughout the fire service that probably just needs to change the whole culture of everything. Women are alienated and marginalized from point of entry in the academy and into the probation. There's been things said like, oh, they're not strong enough, they don't have the mental capacity, but that's why we all take the same test, we're all doing the same thing. Yeah, next slide. In conclusion, improved recruitment and retention can be achieved through reputation building, a solid public image, and the development of supportive policies. Apart from focusing on recruitment, the fire service should take care of the women it already has and acknowledge support for them. Women bring so much to the fire service as an industry. The leader's intent is to create an inclusive workplace. The steps towards the goal must be clearly stated, understood by the entire group, initiated, and reassessed. It is up to the leaders and policymakers to change the current environment and pave the way for the future. I think that's it. Thanks, guys.
All right, you, Kathy.
Yeah.
You're supposed to say any questions?
Oh, I need questions.
I do have a question for you, Cascade. By the way, great presentation. Question is this, so you said what needs to happen. I'm going to put you on the spot and say, what do we need to do here?
So I think I'm doing my part because I've been joined with Dory to do CRR, CRM stuff, and I want to do recruitment too. So I've been working with different things, and my focus is to at least get my face out there, be like, you can be a firefighter, girls can be firefighters. I know in Sedona, I was there first for a little bit, and now we have Maddie, which is awesome. I just want to encourage people to actually apply for us and be stoked to, like, come work fire. It's fun. I love it. So that'll be one of my goals, and then I want to change the parental leave policy. I don't have a plan yet, but my goal is to change it for men and women, just so men just a little bit of time, stuff like that. So I have goals. I just need to figure out how to get there. Any other questions?
Well, actually, this is for Chief Mizoulis. I know you're active in working with, trying to encourage high school students and to get involved with fire service. Are we doing anything to encourage young women in high school?
Sorry to cut you off. So
That's okay.
last year, when we were getting ready to recruit, I reached out to a couple of friends. One's the assistant chief for Tempe, and she's amazing, and then the other one's the chief for Mesa Fire. And I said, hey, hit me up. What are you guys doing about recruiting women? They said, when you figure it out, let us know. And I would argue they're probably the two most aggressive and well-respected fire service leaders in Arizona. And so I said, great, thanks for nothing. But, you know, we and Chief Baker's leading the charge, and then we've got pockets of people all over the place. But in reality, we putting our ear to the rail, and a lot of the suggestions that are coming out is hitting to Cascade's point. It's the physical fitness is a big barrier. It's in a lot of regions, the mystery of a woman being a firefighter is gone, but it's just the physical piece of it and knowing how to do that. So getting young women into the local fire academies with BAC. A lot of folks are reaching out to the volleyball teams and the softball teams, and the women that are already have a culture of fitness in their own personal life, and so the quote heavy lift of getting the physicality and the needs to do a firefighter test, it's a much smaller lift for them because they already have a physical fitness regime. So all the above, we're just hitting it across the ranks. And to jump to Coil's update, we've had our recruitment open for a few weeks, and we've got 3 apps. So it's not. I'm not denying there's a problem getting women in the fire service, but right now there's a problem getting people in the fire service.
Can I add to that real quick?
Yeah.
So one other thing, if I may, is we're looking at opportunities in the community, and read a few studies lately, and they said that the point where we need to capture young adults, men and women, is junior high school, preferably before their junior year in high school. Because by their junior year in the high school, they're already kind of figuring out where they want to go. So we just recently went to a career fair at the Sedona Red Rock High School. It was estimated that 450 students went through. We went to Mingus Union High School last year and invited them for pizza, and we took down some individuals and newer individuals, and they got to speak to, those that were interested. I believe we had 30 or 40 there. So we're trying to do a lot of outreach programs. Cascade's really trying to lead the charge on that, working up in Flagstaff with some groups up there. We stood up a recruitment and retention team and a mentorship team. So if somebody reaches out to me and says, hey, I'd like to ride along, we're scheduling ride-alongs, and I said, okay, I'd like to, if you're interested, I'd like to assign you a mentor. So we've got a mentor group. All right, Cascade's going to be your point of contact for any future questions you may have. So we're looking at opportunities. We went to the Cottonwood Community Career Fair. Cascade was at that one. So we're trying to do everything we can to get our faces out there and let people know about our organization and when we're hiring and what the requirements are, and come in and be welcoming to ride-alongs and come experience what it's like here. But it is extremely challenging. I'm working with President of the Local 3690, David Rodriguez, and Kiona on identifying groups that the IAFF and the PFFA are working with to target minorities. And the PFFA doesn't really have anything right now to kind of talk to Chief Mazulis' point. So David's got to call into IAFF and find out what organizations or groups can help us with that and get that outreach out there to those that may not be getting our message on social media, and see if we can identify some of those pockets to enhance our recruitment. But Cascade's done a great job really taking the lead on a lot of these and stepping up for those career fairs. And we've got her and Madeline and Kim actually registered for the conference in May, which is the Women's Leadership Conference in Mesa. So the three of them will be attending that, and I'm hoping the more we can get out there, and these ladies are out there trying to seek more information and tools available for us, we can enhance our recruitment of female firefighters and just firefighters in general. Because as Chief Missoula said, it's not easy right now, and we're hitting the high school programs, the VAC schools, and it's a challenge. It is a challenge.
Last week I spoke to the Yavapai College soon to graduate fire science program. These are young men and women that are in a fire science program to get the prerequisite training to test. And it was myself and 3 other fire chiefs from the region, and it's a Q&A open session, and we asked, who knows that we're hiring right now, and 3 of the 4 are hiring, and everybody raised their hand, and we said, well, who's applied? And 2 people raised their hand out of 30, 25 or 30. And then we asked why, and it was just, well, I'm thinking about it. And then, so we're trying. Is my point.
And I'm hoping by standing up that mentor program, we get a couple female firefighters or potential firefighters that ride along. I can hook them up with Cascade or Dory or Madeline and say, hey, these are your mentors. So when we do hire, reach out to them, and they'll help you with the process if we need to make sure your application's in, make sure you're meeting the requirement, make sure you're prepared for the CPAT test, and give them all the tools to be successful. But it's definitely a challenge, but kudos to Cascade for stepping up. And I don't think she really wanted to come and present tonight, but she agreed to it.
But
yeah, for sure.
And she doesn't know it, but she's the first of what will be many. And I want a level of discomfort amongst our less seasoned firefighters and interacting with the board. So she's the first of many to come.
Thank you.
Good job. I didn't get a chance to make a comment. I wanted to make a couple comments on the entire issue of women in the fire service, of which, and perhaps even Scott has had female firefighters in their command.
Yep.
But it starts with firefighters who are fathers, especially fathers of daughters. You have to take them out and get used to, at an early age, on how to start the lawnmower, how to change the oil, how to do those things that are the very basic of skills within this career field. The target age, as you identify as perhaps juniors in high school, is almost too late. It has to start earlier, especially from the firefighters who are dads. They carry a tremendous responsibility to both sons and daughters to get them into this career field if they choose. And I could give no better example than perhaps Chief Booth with her father. I've had daughters, and they were always under the car with me, painting the house, and it goes as far as making your bed. You know, show them how to do that. Let them see you doing that, because it all comes together later on down the road. There's a lot of issues with this new set of rules that are out there for creating a work environment that is equal for both men and women. And it's difficult in this career field in particular because we're living together. And we eat together, we shower together, well, we don't. We're there 24 hours. Yeah, we're there 24 hours. So it creates a set of circumstances that we all have to adjust to and be respectful of. And we've gone through this where I came from years and years ago, and the sooner we, as the male part of this, the male side of this equation, understands what it takes, the sooner this whole thing can happen. By the same token, when the female comes in the workspace, they have to realize what they're getting into. And there's mechanisms to voice your opinions, to state your concerns as they come about, so that there is no misunderstandings. And a lot of it rests with the officers of those companies. So it takes work on everybody's behalf, but it is extremely rewarding. It puts the district at a whole nother level when you have parity amongst both genders, all races, and it makes it fun coming to work. And everybody is up to coming to work and facing the challenge so that we all can work as a team together better. So kudos to your presentation and your involvement, as well as Chief Booth. And I look forward to seeing many more women, many more people of color, just to make this district the best that it possibly can be. So, thank you.
Yeah. I think the big word is, in my experience, I did my 34 years, lived through it, and we had females at the end of where I was at because it was down the line. And of course, you know, there still was that kind of smell in the air type of thing where the older guys were still not giving this respect. And it has to be going both ways because, hey, everybody has their little things, you know, but there were a lot of women I would have rather worked with some of these other weirdos that were on my cruise. And I just thought, yeah, they can do that. And you mentioned the daughter thing. My daughter wanted to, and I said, no, I don't want you to. I think that's the worst thing that I've ever done as a dad.
That's what my dad said too, and here I am, so.
Yeah. Mine didn't, because the stuff wouldn't wear, or she couldn't wear the gear. She was very small, and she's now a teacher. But she's doing her thing.
Well, very good. Thank you very much.
Yes, Dave.
Okay.
Back to work.
Chief, it's back at you.
All right, so both Chief Coyle and Chief Lukowski are on vacation, so I'm going to pretend to be them, and I will be as brief as I can. I'm going to read up. So Chief Coyle's Operations Assistant Chief Coyle. Dory's going to speak about a little bit more about the significant event and the outcomes of the fatality fire. Other than that, it's just been busy. We had a significant event yesterday. Briefly report out on more details. We had a family hiking Bear Mountain, and tragically the young mom lost her life. She fell and is deceased. So we're working with our crews that were part of that call, and they did a fantastic job helping the family, who was obviously in distress, figuring out the things. They were visitors to this town, and so I'm working through that. But it's significant in nature because of all things involved, and then navigating that as we speak. The second radio position that we've been attempting to hire for a while, we got a conditional offer of employment out earlier this week, and well, being yesterday because it's only Tuesday. It feels like Thursday, but so we've got a conditional offer of employment out, and I want to park on it for a minute. I think it's unique. Fiona and Chief Coyle and I put our heads together, and as you know, we hired the second position quite a few months back, and then that, based on the circumstances, that person didn't work out. And so we had it once again vacated and did another round of interviews and found an individual that has a great background, but not all the competencies that Bob was looking for. And so we got creative with the recruitment agency that's helping us with radio technicians, and we offered this individual an apprenticeship position with some requirements within 90 days to acquire some of the baseline certs that are needed to fill the spot. And then once that's completed, then they move to the normal salary schedule, and the person accepted. So we're doing all the background checks and things like that, and we'll get Bob his second radio staff member, so that's exciting. And I already spoke with some of you about this. Job descriptions are complete. I signed them all. And now COIL is working on a fundamental performance management process so that we can better evaluate employees, because our current system is annually. The supervisor is required to remember all the good and bads for the year and come up with some suggestions for the coming year. And this one will be more interactive and regularly scheduled so that employees have a better understanding of where their performance is and what they improve in real time versus a look back at the year. You know, it's the classic model where you evaluate once a year and forget half the stuff. So that's taken up some time. And then, as I mentioned, the firefighter recruitment is open. It's gone out nationally, and our applicants are trending what other agencies are seeing, and we'll see how this goes. We're early in the application process, so we'll see how things manifest. As I said, some of the kids I talked to, young adults I talked to last week, indicated they didn't read the app. We clearly state that you don't have to have the certs, you have to have them by midsummer after the graduations happen, and they didn't comprehend that. So I think that might bump up some stuff, but just plugging away and working on getting budget buttoned up, and that's kind of been COIL's big tasks, other than assisting with the restructuring of personnel, which we discussed earlier. So with that, we'll move on to Chief Booth. I would just talk.
That's true. I don't know why we bother. So I kind of changed up the slides a little bit. One of the bring homes from the ESO conference was learning how to make the charts and widgets and things of that nature from what's already in existence in some of their new software programming. So this month I went ahead with inspections by type. Our predominant ones are going to be our tenant occupancies, which are the new people are moving into a building or a suite. We go in with the building officials to make sure that they are ready for the business that they're in, that they have all the sprinklers that they're supposed to, and they're safe to open for business. Next ones are going to be our automatic sprinkler rough-ins and initial construction inspection. So a lot of that's going to be our residential homes. We've got a lot of those coming in from the Yavapai County side as well as the city of Sedona. Coconino is pretty stagnant in general throughout the canyon because there's not a lot of area to develop, so it's more renovations and remodels in that perspective. Plan review types, we're seeing more and more of those come in as they're finding land to build out here. So that's about 37% of our review types is a single family residence, the initial reviews. And then a lot of those are being built in the wildland urban interface, or they're large enough homes that are requiring the sprinkler system. So that's why that 24% is pretty directly correlated with the types of homes that we're seeing coming in from that single family residence. These are the pie. Notable events Chief Missoula said, and we talked about it a little bit last month, was the fatal residential home fire at Sunset Mobile Home Park on March 12th. We did rule the fire undetermined, and that's largely because of the extensive damage that was there. Some contributing factors that were not able to be ruled out are are the electrical cords and temporary wiring used for permanent wiring. And then there was no smoke alarms present in the home. So in response to that, we are partnering with the Arizona Burn Foundation, Red Cross on May 18th to do a smoke alarm canvas in the community where the smoke alarms are provided, as well as the tools and the training for volunteers to do this. And there's about 200 homes throughout the park, and starting really this week, the mobile home parks community letter is going out that's saying that we are doing the smoke alarm canvas and it's free for them to come. But also on May 11th, my team, in partnership with the community center at Sunset Mobile Home Park, is doing a presentation on the steps to safety through NFPA, which talks about home fire safety and fall prevention, talking about resources that are available to them in the community for the older adult population as well. And hopefully we'll get some sign-ups from there as well. So we are seeking volunteers from the community. I sent one out through all staff for us as well. But again, that's Saturday, May 18th is the smoke alarm walk, and at 8:15 is the start of the training time. So that'll be about 45 minutes, and we plan on being out in the community by about 9 o'clock to start going door to door. And then also, of course, those that pre-register for the sign-up will, those will be the primary. But we have gone out for a couple and installed smoke alarms already that said that they didn't have any, but that just kind of proves that that neighborhood really needs this canvas. So thankfully, to our partners with Arizona Burn Foundation and Red Cross, that they're helping make this happen, and largely in cooperation and with the community itself. They've taken a big step in this and have really been pushing to get the presentation and the volunteers going. So that event is not on here because when I made the slide, I didn't have the confirmed dates yet. So, other notable events, Fire Inspector Russell, our new inspector, new to us inspector, achieved his ICC Fire Inspector 1 and 2 certifications. His previous organization didn't require them. So they're, as he will attest, they are not easy tests. He's got one left. We've been starting conversations with our regional partners and CRR for adopting the 2024 International Fire and Wildland Urban Interface Codes, kind of taking a look for the significant changes. I do anticipate us getting that adoption completed at the very latest at the end of the year, but my goal is probably in the fall to have that taken care of. But we also are working on doing a regional code, so contractors, homeowners, everybody's on the same page with the same requirements and fee schedules and everything. Upcoming events, and Cascade just left. She's been going to LAFT, which is Life and Fire Safety, the youth education program that is comprised of Verde Valley Ambulance, Verde Valley Fire, Cottonwood Fire, Jerome, Copper Canyon, and now us, going to all the schools in the region and putting on a life safety kit, basically that's interactive. And they get a pre-test and post-test from the event. So it gets built into the school curriculum. Got one more week of that left. Then I handed you guys all out a printout, but we have set the date for our annual Wildfire Preparedness Day. So the Village of Oak Creek, right in the outlet center, will be there the 27th and the 28th. And then at West Sedona School on May 4th and 5th. These are free events for the community to bring yard waste in preparation for the wildfire season and creating defensible space around their homes. Before we switch over to the safety message, do you guys have any questions on this slide? Oh, one thing that you guys did ask last month, and we've done some research. To the best of our knowledge, we have 4 mobile home parks. I think that was a question that got asked last month. And talking with the battalion chiefs and Matt, trying to figure out where things are, it looks like 4 organized mobile home parks throughout the district.
Was there a reference as to why do we want to Was this because of that one fire, or was there specific items within a mobile home park that they were looking for, or?
That was the
That was a question from the board, asked how many mobile home parks that we had in the community.
Oh, so just in totality?
In
Okay.
totality,
4, right?
4.
Can I ask you something though about that real quick?
Uh-huh.
I do,
I think.
yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks.
check with Bill.
I know exactly where it is because I can see it from where I live. And, it's the typical thing there, and most of the people, wouldn't know anything about this, you know, or how to save themselves. And last thing I had for that, I don't know how many people in there. I was gonna give you a number, but I don't remember. But it's just good to know that we're doing it at those type of things, because those people, some of them are non-ambulatory. I deliver Meals on Wheels to them, and, you know, sometimes I'm the, what do you call it? Delivery boy, not just the food, but the type of style, I guess you say, of some of those people that are living down there. And you may have them come to you from the community center.
Okay.
I mean, because I'll bring them back and then go there. Okay, I'm done now.
And we can work together too, and that's one of the things I think we're trying to build is community capacity as part of the community risk reduction program, and changing its chief boost program to, I may facilitate all the things that go into community risk reduction, but it really is a community effort. So, you know, you're delivering Meals on Wheels, our guys are going on calls, fires such as this incident, being able to bring those back and do we have hot spots? We're working with Matt Spinelli on creating heat maps of where are our falls happening. Do we need to go in and do a home safe home assessment and identify what they're tripping over, smoke alarms, and just kind of taking a step back at the big picture in the community, finding out what's important to the community and not just SFD as they see it as well.
Were we able to acquire the smoke detectors for this canvassing through the Red Cross, or how do we come about with the smoke detectors for this community canvas plan?
So the smoke alarms are actually part of grant programs between the Red Cross and the Arizona Burn Foundation. State Farm is a big partner in that as well. So they've acquired and they will provide the smoke alarms as well as bed shakers and strobe devices for those that are hard of hearing or visually impaired to help increase the survivability of getting out of their homes. As of right now, we're not providing the smoke alarms because they're being provided for us by our partners with Burn Foundation and Red Cross.
Thank you. That's good. Any other questions for Chief Booth? Okay.
Right, so quick safety message, because I know we're probably already run. This is just coming into that right before the cleanup goes, home ignition zones. The closer you get to the home, the less combustible material you want near your home. It doesn't mean moonscaping, but it does mean removing dead vegetation, cleaning out your gutters, your eaves, rooftops, getting all of the things that have accumulated over the years in the winter underneath your porches, patios, and bringing those to us to dispose of for you. That's what this program is for, that we're doing in the end of April, beginning of May, is really trying to create that defensible barrier to build resiliency to fire.
Thank you. Chief?
All right, operational support, DC Lukowski. So fleet, type 6 is July?
We should be going back soon for the final construction now, July, probably late July.
So one of the 3 fire trucks we have ordered has a potential arrival date, so that's good. No updates on our Type 1 engines at this time. Bus did just complete a re-chassis assessment with the ambulance manufacturer, and for those that haven't been here for a re-chassis, we cycle in new apparatus purchases, which is the cab and the ambulance box, and then with the manufacturer we use, they re-chassis them at a few 100,000 miles, so they take our good box off, put it on a new good chassis, and it's less expensive than building a new ambulance, and then it keeps that ambulance going for longer and saves the taxpayer some money. So just button up a reach hazing, and we hope to have the numbers on that for next month's board meeting. EMS, he's got wins and losses. The big ones right now is, we were able to